This presentation examines the educational issue explored in Assessment Task 1, focusing on how educators use NCCD adjustments and NAPLAN achieved data to guide educational decision making for students with neurodevelopmental conditions. It also outlines how the annotated bibliography informed the development of a proposed small-scale research study for assessment task 2. Inclusive education policy in Australia emphasises equitable educational participation and achievement for students with disability, including students with neurodevelopmental disabilities. Within schools, the NCCD documents the educational adjustments students require, while NAPLAN provides national literacy and numeracy achievement data. However, educators may experience challenges using these forms of data together to support educational planning and decision making. These issues may be further impacted by intersecting contextual factors within rural primary school settings. The initial research question is, what do NCCD and NAPLAN data reveal about literacy and numeracy outcomes for students with neurodevelopmental conditions in Queensland schools? Now, this initial focus of the annotated bibliography explored how NCCD adjustments data and NAPLAN achievement data could support the evaluation of educational outcomes. Early investigations centred on inclusive education, educational accountability, and the use of national education data sets to evaluate literacy and numeracy achievement. Several key terms underpin this research topic. The Nationally Consistent Collection of Data on School Students with Disability, or NCCD, documents the educational adjustments schools provide to students with disability. NAPLAN is Australia's National Literacy and Numeracy Assessment Program used to measure student achievement. This presentation focuses primarily on students with neurodevelopmental disabilities, including conditions affecting cognitive, behavioural communication and learning development. And inclusive education refers to educational approaches that promote equitable participation and achievement for all learners. Several key themes emerged across the annotated bibliography literature. First, inclusive education and educational equity were central concerns, particularly regarding equitable participation and achievement for students with disability. A second theme involved the role of NCCD adjustments in documenting educational support needs, and the third, the literature examined NAPLAN as a national measure of literacy and numeracy achievement and educational accountability. Finally, several studies identified challenges using educational data to meaningfully support inclusive education decision making. So Richardson and Rollo examined the relationship between NCCD adjustments data and NAPLAN achievement outcomes within Australian inclusive education context. The study highlighted tensions between educational accountability measures and inclusive educational practice, suggesting that educational adjustments and achievement outcomes may not align clearly within those frameworks. These findings contributed to concerns regarding how educational data can meaningfully support evaluation of inclusive education outcomes. De Bruin examined tensions between inclusive ed and standardised accountability practices using path dependency theory, arguing historical accountability structures within Australia education influence contemporary inclusive education practice. This study asserts that standardised assessment measures may not adequately reflect the diverse learning needs of students requiring educational adjustments. These findings highlighted the complexity of evaluating educational outcomes for students with neurodevelopmental disabilities within inclusive educational environments. Graham and colleagues examined inclusive ed implementation practices within contemporary educational contexts. Their study highlighted challenges associated with implementing inclusive educational approaches and supporting diverse learner needs within school environments. These findings do reinforce the importance of understanding educated decision-making processes in inclusive education. When these studies are considered collectively, a clear pattern emerges. Policy frameworks supporting inclusive education are well established. Reporting of academic achievement adjustments occurs, providing substantial national data sets. However, there's no integrated system capable of evaluating the impact of educational adjustments on educational outcomes. Richardson and Rollo highlight the issue of visibility within assessment data. De Bruin explains the structural foundations. Graham and colleagues demonstrate the importance of outcome data where such data is available. Consequently, the issue is not simply the absence of data, but rather the design and structure of the educational system itself. The literature reviews reveal the inherent challenges of assessing the learning outcomes of students with neurodevelopmental disabilities using national data sets alone. Understanding how educators currently use adjustments and achievement data is critical to establishing a baseline empirical understanding of what currently occurs in classrooms. So the plan is a small-scale qualitative study situated within a rural primary school in Queensland, emphasising educator decision-making within an inclusive rural Queensland primary school setting. The literature review process informed refinement towards a more focused and feasible research question from the initial one that was proposed. The proposed research question examines how educators use NCCD adjustments and NAPLAN achievement data to guide educational decision-making for students with neurodevelopmental disabilities within a rural Queensland primary school context. So therefore, a small-scale qualitative approach was identified as appropriate because it allows investigation of educator perspectives and experience within the real-world setting. In conclusion, the literature highlighted the complexity of evaluating inclusive educational outcomes using adjustment and achievement data within contemporary educational contexts. The review process informed refinement towards a feasible school-based qualitative research study focused on educator decision-making within an inclusive educational setting. This proposed research aims to contribute to understanding how educational data may support inclusive educational practice and decision-making within rural school contexts. And here's our reference list. Thank you for listening.